Welcome. We're here for the League of Women Voters Candidate Forum. The League of Women Voters, Metro North Chamber of Commerce, the North Suburban Optimists, and Positively Fridley welcome you to meet the candidates for those running for State House Seat 41A. House District 41A comprises all of Fridley and a portion of New Brighton. Thanks to the candidates and to the City of Fridley for assistance from the communications section for use to the City Council chambers today, and they're the ones that make this event possible. This year, the League of Women Voters is holding our Meet the Candidates Forum without an audience to avoid the COVID-19 spread. Look for upcoming forums on our website, which is lwvabcmn.org, and that stands for League of Women Voters, Anoka Blaine, Coon Rapids, Minnesota.org, and select the Meet the Candidates option found on the left-hand side of the web page. This is also the site where you can submit questions for the upcoming forums. Hello, I'm Kathy Tinglestead. I'm the trained moderator for the Anoka Blaine Coon Rapids Area League of Women Voters. Because I live in Coon Rapids, I can't vote for these District 41A candidates. All candidates for this race were invited to participate in the forum. The League of Women Voters does not support or oppose any political parties or candidates for office. These candidates care very much whom you vote for, but the League does not. The League does hope that you will vote. That's the most important thing. The goal of this forum is to help citizens become informed voters. The term of office for state representatives in the Minnesota House of Representatives is 2 years. The candidates for State House District 41A are Connie Bernardy and Susan Erickson. Susan Erickson is not present because of the possibility of bringing coronavirus into her home that she shares with a vulnerable relative. However, we have 3 statements plus her closing comments to read on her behalf. Those were submitted. We will begin with the 3 questions that were provided to the candidates in advance. With each question, I will ask Connie Bernardy to respond, and then, as in the first 3 questions, I will read Susan Anderson's response. After those first 3 questions, then I will direct questions only to Connie Bernardy that were submitted earlier through the public forum on the League of Women Voters website. Of course, we had more questions submitted than there is time for today, so the questions are narrowed down. So we'll start with the first question, which was provided in advance, and this will go, of course, to Connie Bernardy. The question is, describe your background and community involvement. 1 minute.
Thank you. Well, I grew up in our community, and I'm a mom, a wife, an community advocate, and a worker. I'm your state representative, and I give a shout out for Spring Lake Park too. Spring Lake Park is also a part of our district in addition to Fridley and parts of New Brighton. I've been actively involved in our community. When our schools were having to make cuts for our students' opportunities, I brought together teachers, parents, senior citizens, and students who fought for and won needed funding for our school. Now I serve as the Minnesota House of Representatives Higher Education Chair, where I have been able to hold down tuition costs and prevent tuition increases, as well as helping get students into our classrooms at an early age in preschool, working with the governor, as well as voluntary all-day kindergarten. I also grew up in the community, and my parents worked at 2 of the Superfund sites in our area, and we live next to a Superfund site. So I learned at an early age the importance of clean water, clean air to breathe, and clean soil to be able to plant and live on. Thank you.
Thank you. And now I'll read the written comments from Susan Erickson regarding the question of describe your background and community involvement. Susan says, I grew up in Northeast Minneapolis, and my dad's job took us to 5 states before returning to Minnesota. My home has been New Brighton for 42 years. I graduated from LaSalle College in Brighton, Massachusetts, and I was a paralegal at several law firms in downtown Minneapolis throughout my career. I own a small clothing business, SAE Design, LLC. Over the years, I've been the volunteer coordinator at my church, was on the Planning Commission in New Brighton, and was the chair of the Senate District 41 Republicans for several terms. When COVID-19 hit, I made and donated masks to Unity Hospital and the new Brighton Fire Department. I also collected food from all over the district for the Ralph Reeder Food Shelf when they needed it most. That concludes her written comment. And so we'll go to the next question that was submitted to the candidates. And I'll go back to Connie Bernardy. What was your qualifications for serving as a state representative, and why are you seeking this office? 1 minute.
Well, first of all, I have a deep love for our community, and I'm proud to carry those values with me to the Capitol. People care about one another here and want to see each other succeed. I have experience at the Capitol. I'll be one of 20 members with experience at the Capitol and seniority, so I'm really happy about that. And I also am, my professional background, I work in public health, and my career has been bringing people together to improve health. And so I have experience in passing legislation. I have been able to work across the aisle and party lines. In fact, our moderator here and I have worked together to do things for our community, and that's what I focus on. I focus on our community. And if you drive down University Avenue in Fridley, you will see the changes that are being made to the community because of the work that I have done and the funding that I have been able to get at the Capitol to help create a community where people can be safe and move about our community. And there's a lot more work to be done, and I will continue to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. And then the response submitted from Susan Anderson regarding this question of what are your qualifications for serving as a state representative and why are you seeking this office? Susan Erickson says, my paralegal career has taught me to analyze and research every issue to determine the best solution. In the past, some residents have voted for a person because they think they align with a particular political party, but times have really changed. While speaking with voters in the district this summer, they are now increasingly calling for new representation, real leadership, civility, and effective common sense solution for the challenges ahead. I am ready to be that person on day one. That was submitted by Susan Erickson, excuse me. And so we'll go to the third question that was submitted, and that is, what are your short and long-term goals as representative for this area, 41A? And we'll go to Connie Bernardy.
Well, we have many short-term needs right now, especially during this pandemic and also the murder of George Floyd. And I have been inspired by the people who help neighbors and neighbors helping neighbors and raising their voices for social justice. So we need to focus on making a just and safe community for everyone. So that's one of the things that we first need to work on, and we need to be able to address our state budget as we invest in in Minnesota. I've been in the Capitol where I have had that experience in budget deficits and budget surpluses. So that's one of the things that in the short term, we have to do. In the long term, in the short term too, we have to make sure that everybody has affordable health care and prescription drugs. There are a lot of urgent needs in our community that will take short-term strategies as well as long-term strategies. So we need to be focusing on healthcare, we need to be focusing on education, and a safe and just community. So those are the things in the short term, and University Avenue is in the short term, and that will continue to be a long-term project. Thank you.
Thanks. And then the written response that was submitted by Susan Erickson regarding the question of short and long-term goals as a state representative for 41A. Susan Erickson says, Minnesota has a long, challenging road ahead. Urgent attention is needed to balance our state budget. We all want a safe and thriving state with great schools and a strong safety net. Yet in a few months, our $1.5 billion surplus is now gotten much larger, over $5 billion of deficit. We must prioritize taxes, spending, and borrowing to responsibly meet the needs of all Minnesotans. Every department of government should be independently audited to stop waste, fraud, and redundancy and abuse. The inaction and abdication of power to the governor last session by the current legislators have left a long list of issues needing action. The riots and unrest in the Twin Cities is a top issue among voters. Major focus must be on public safety and judicial reform. Other issues include affordable health care, closing the achievement gap, jobs, transportation, energy, elections, guns, bonding, and more. And that concludes the 3 questions that were submitted to the candidates. So for the remainder of the questions, other than the closing comments, we'll be hearing from Connie Bernardy. So as you know, questions were submitted by the co-sponsors of this forum, and I thought we'd start with an easy one here. What do you and your family do for fun during the pandemic?
Well, during the pandemic, we have had a lot of family time together, and that is something that I have cherished and I treasure. And so what we've done the most of is walking together. I try to aim for 2 walks a day, one in the morning and one in the evening, and hopefully I'll at least get one in. Some days get really busy, and when the pandemic was first happening, I was basically working around the clock. I got my rest, but from morning until night, communicating information on how you get your unemployment insurance and all those kinds of things. So it's been a really, really busy time, but in the times we're at home together, we have really enjoyed our family time and taking walks together with our dog.
Thank you. And related to the pandemic, is the issue at the Capitol right now about emergency powers that Governor Walz has declared because of the coronavirus. Do you have any ideas of what you would do differently in next session?
Well, you brought up about the governor's powers, and across the country, 49 out of 50 states have emergency powers underneath the governor. And what that does, it allows the state to be able to be nimble and make quick decisions so that people have the emergency protection on their faces. They were able to get their unemployment insurance quickly. So there's a lot of different things, housing, different kinds of issues that really impact people's daily lives. And having that emergency powers order in by the governor helps a lot. And also as well, we actually get $50 million from the federal government when we're in those emergency powers. And so I can't wait till we're back to normal, the new normal, as we say. But this is important that we all work together and that we work to get the needed resources to our community and the members of our community so that their lives can go on and be whole.
Thank you. And moving on here to a kind of a related issue with this year's legislative session during the summer, what do you think of the statewide police reforms that were passed by the legislature in special session, and are more reforms needed? If they're adequate, please explain. If it's inadequate, what other legislation is needed? Connie Bernardy.
Well, it's really important, I think we all can come together around the fact that we want to make sure that our loved ones make it home, whether we're brown, black, or white, whether we're a police officer or not. And so we were able to work bipartisanly across the aisle to come up with some immediate measures, and those measures will help our community and our law enforcement be safer. And so some of the measures that got passed and that still need to come are things like de-escalation, giving training for people to understand a child who has autism or an adult who has autism and how to de-escalate the situation and to help that person and not create and escalate violence. And then things like preventing chokeholds and not allowing that to happen where somebody actually can die. There's a lot. We passed about a dozen measures, and there's more to go, and we need to continue to flush those out and really work together with our community and our law enforcement.
Thank you. Another question related to public safety. As far as restoring the right to vote to citizens in the community who are on probation or parole due to a felony conviction, do you support restoring the right to vote? Why or why not?
I actually am an author on that bill, and I was able to chair one of the committees in which that was presented in the Minnesota House of Representatives. I strongly support that bill because I believe in redemption, I believe in fairness, and I believe if someone has served their time, that they ought to be able to be integrated back in our society, be full citizens, and have the right to vote. In Minnesota, we oftentimes have long paroles, and that is a time when people actually can't vote, and there's a lot of confusion about it. And it's important that we reintegrate people into our community. They become productive citizens in our community and a part of helping our state be successful. And part of that is the opportunity and giving them their rights to vote.
Thank you. And also a public safety-related question. Do you support laws that require background checks on private gun sales and red flag laws which give law enforcement the ability to confiscate weapons from those believed to be of risk to themselves and others? So regarding background checks on private gun sales and red flags. Connie Bernardy.
We really need to pass some we need to stop the senseless gun violence that's happening in our state. And there is some broad-based community support for some of the measures that you just mentioned. I grew up in a family with hunting and fishing, and around November we would process our deer that my dad and my brother would get hunting. And I have family members that carry, and my daughter just got a musket loader. She's a hunter herself. And so it's a part of our life. And we want to put in common sense measures, and people in our communities support them to make sure that we have those background checks in place. And if someone is could harm themselves and others, that's an important area to address. And then, suicides are a huge issue in our state, and people losing their lives and their loved ones. And so it is definitely something that needs to be a priority, and we need to pass it.
Thank you. Going into issues of health and human services, do you plan on supporting family values and reducing fatherlessness in our communities? And I think this relates to children having at least two parents raising a child. So do you support family values and reducing fatherlessness? Connie Bernardy.
Well, that's a very interesting question, and I would like to say that I would love every child to be able to come into this world with a mother and a father, and that doesn't always happen. And one of an important part of it is that people have the right to their own reproductive rights, and so that's something that I strongly support. And I am glad they asked the values question was asked, because I am so proud to bring our community values back to the Capitol. Growing up here, I learned about the importance of helping others. I learned about teamwork. I learned about advocating for those that don't have a voice. And the strength of our community is our ability to be there for each other. And so whether someone has two parents at home, one parent at home, they live with a grandparent, we need to be supportive to every one of our community members, and no matter what circumstance they're in, and be able to help everybody be able to be successful and have opportunity.
Thank you. Moving from family issues to related issues of youth, what do you see as the greatest need or challenge for youth in Minnesota, and how would you as elected official help to solve the issues related to youth challenges?
Well, youth they're our future, and they're our promise, and there is so much potential in our youth, and we focusing on creating an education system that helps support them, supports their dreams, and helps them achieve their potential is an important part of the work that we do as a state legislature. We are the people that decide how we're going to fund our schools. Is there going to be enough money? Is there going to be cuts? Are we going to care that they have music and phy-ed and art? There's so many things that young people benefit from, and we need to make sure that we invest in that. And after-school programs, and making sure that kids have the opportunity to learn over their summer and have activities to be a part in. And, that takes investment, and not only from funding, but it also takes investment by our community members. And I've been proud to see all the different things in our community that we do to support young people.
Thank you. Moving on to more general things, and this one relates to business. Please describe any experience you have owning or managing a business, as well as specific advocacy efforts on behalf of the local business community.
Well, thank you very much for that. My family did not own a small business. We had a consulting business. My husband and I both were self-employed, so we know what it's like to be able to get our own health care coverage and pay for that. We know what it's like paying for self-employment insurance. And so that's the experience that I have had that personally. I also have a little consulting business on the side that I don't do a lot in, but so that's our family's experience. We've experienced doing those things, and then also our friends and our family have their businesses, and we learn a lot from them and the challenges that they experience. And so it is. Our small businesses are the strength of our community, and they make us strong, and they need the support to be able to thrive and be successful here.
Thank you. And coming back to the coronavirus issue, as far as local businesses now and what they've had to go through during the shutdown, what would you do over the next several months to help be supportive of businesses in this House district?
Well, in our community, we have been fortunate that we've been able to roll out different initiatives that have helped our business community as well as our community members. And at the Capitol, under the emergency powers that we've had, we have been able to enact grant programs that people were applied through the federal government did that got to our community members. It's called DEED. It's the part of our state government that enacts the unemployment benefits. And I know one of the contractor friends of mine, they were be able to get one of those grants and be able to keep their construction company going on during COVID. And so we need to make sure that we're as nimble as possible and that we get those resources as quickly as possible into the hands of our businesses and our residents.
Thank you. The next question is more specific to the Fridley area of your House district, and there's a couple statistics in it. It says Fridley has 246 income-based apartments in which tenants typically pay more than 30% of their income towards rent and utilities. In addition to those 246, there's another 16 apartments that are rent subsidized that do not provide direct rental assistance but remain affordable to low-income households in Fridley. So the question is related to those 246 low-income apartments and the other 16 rent subsidized. Is this sufficient housing in Fridley for low-income people? If not, what do you propose?
Well, it's important that everybody has a roof over their head and stable housing. And that's an area that I have worked on at the Capitol. We're trying to get a bonding bill passed right now, and there is a lot of money in housing in that. People should not be having to pay more than 30% of their income because they need the rest of their income to be able to live on for food and, groceries and clothes and all those kinds of things. And so, whatever we can do in our community to have our community members be able to spend 30% or less, those are initiatives at the Capitol that we need to be promoting. And frankly, it's really tough out there. One of the gentlemen that I was helping, he was being evicted because his building was going to be upgrading the facility, and he wasn't going to be able to afford moving back in. And so those are the challenges, and we need to be able to have different opportunities for people to be able to have shelter over their heads.
Thank you, Connie Bernardy. And as you can see, most of the questions have related to what's going on in society nowadays and our economy related to the pandemic. So this next question, and I only have one other one besides this, but this next question talks about the revenue deficit at the Capitol. And you talked about how you've served in both types of revenue situations. And so this question specifically says there'll be many additional costs relating to combating the pandemic and reduce income from business and income taxes. So what remedies are you looking forward to proposing in the next session to help balance the deficit and get through the next fiscal year? What are you looking at personally as a legislator?
Well, one of the things that we need to look at is our budget as a moral document. We need to figure out what our values are, what we want to invest in, what's important to us as a state, and then we need to figure out how we're going to get there. And the most important thing, I think, is that we have a progressive tax system. And what that means is the people that make the most money have the ability to pay, that they're taxed. And I've done some work in doing a deeper dive in our taxes in the state of Minnesota. And what I found was that people at much higher income level, like the ultra wealthy, they were paying such a smaller percentage of taxes than the person in the lower income bracket. And that's not progressive and it's not fair. And so we really, whether it's people that make over $500,000 or 400,000, we need to be looking at ways in which we're collecting revenue in a fair way that everybody's paying their fair share. So that would be, and closing corporate loopholes would be a way that I would look at it.
Thank you. And then the last question here before we go into closing comments. So in addition to the budget situation at the Capitol in the 2021 session, the other major item will be redistricting. And with the completion of the 2020 census, Minnesota will draft and enact a new district maps for legislative seats and congressional seats. And the state legislature is responsible for drawing these maps. Do you support the current process, or do you believe that there should be changes? And if so, what? Regarding redistricting, Connie Bernardy.
Well, I think some of the opportunities before us to explore and to look at, and I serve on the elections committee, so I am fortunate to be a part of this conversation. And one of the areas is to get it out of, to help it not be so partisan and have it be winners and losers. We want our members of the state of, our residents of Minnesota to be the winners. So we can't have the gerrymandering happen and, voter suppression. We don't want that either. And so any kind of process that helps make it fair and balanced and less partisan, those are the proposals that ought to be being looked at, and what we are looking at in the Elections Committee in the Minnesota House of Representatives.
Thank you. So with that, we'll go into closing comments. So Connie Bernardy, if you could start out with your first closing comment.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Growing up in our community, I know firsthand how people care about one another and how we want to see each other succeed. And I have been so inspired by our essential workers on the front lines, people helping their neighbors, and then also people raising their voices for social justice. I know our community strength comes from our ability to work together, and I know working across faith, race, and place that we can actually create a community where people have the health care that they need, they have the ability to achieve their dreams, and then they also have time to take care of themselves and their families. My career has been creating community partnerships around health, and I know that working together, we have the power to shape our future. One that's a safe and just community, one that's affordable health care and prescription drugs, and one that has clean energy and healthy climate. And together we can make sure that that happens with no exceptions, whether you're black, brown, or white. We need to be sure that there's justice for all, opportunity for all, and we have health care for all. And I want people to know out there, if they need any help during this pandemic on state issues, please contact me. And I just want to say, we didn't have one about the environment. I'm proud to have been able to get funding for the $5 million Springbrook Nature Center project and be able to store those wetlands. It is a jewel and gem in our community, and I'm so glad we were able to join that. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, the closing statement from the other candidate, Susan Erickson, and she submitted this in writing. This year has been a challenge for everyone. We need to move forward, focus on the good news, and not let scary headlines paralyze you with fear. Hospitals are not overwhelmed. ICU numbers are down. All deaths are tragic, but have been in single digits for over 2 months now, and most were elderly with severe comorbidities. Everyone knows a virus cannot be stopped, so we need to protect the vulnerable and get back to allowing Minnesota's economy to recover. Now is the time. We can bring back jobs, open our schools safely, and let our great state thrive. It will take legislators coming together to work for the good of their communities to do this. I'm ready to do this work. And Susan Erickson lists her contact there, her website, www.susan4minnesotahouse41a.com. So the 4 is the digit 4, and then I'll read it again, www.susan4mnhouse41a.com. And so with that concludes the remarks from our two candidates for this House District 41A district, Connie Bernardy and Susan Erickson. And I've just got a few closing things here to wrap it up. Thank you, candidates, for speaking to voters about issues and for running for House District 41A. Thanks to the viewers for your interest in becoming informed voters. And as we move through this election season, you will find information and links to upcoming and recorded Meet the Candidate Forum for local offices organized by League of Women Voters, the ABC group, Anoka, Blaine, Coon Rapids. And that's at the website lwvabcmn.org. Each voter has several convenient methods to vote. You may request an absentee ballot by mail by accessing either the Secretary of State's website or the website www.mnvotes.org. That's mnvotes.org. Additionally, you can vote early in person beginning September 18th at the City Hall or the Anoka County Elections Office during office hours. It's open longer hours as it gets to the last weekend before the election. And if you need to register to vote or update your registration, you can do that online when you go to vote. And of course, remember to make your voice heard. General Election Day is on Tuesday, March 3rd. And with that, thank you. Stay healthy and safe. Good evening.
Thank you.